We now have a Timespy score leaked for the 9070 XT, which if you missed yesterday's video is apparently going to be the naming scheme for AMD's next graphics card. And that means that since Timespy is a known factor, you can stack it up against all of these similarly performant GPUs in Timespy to get an idea of where that falls relative to current products. Now, where is all of this information coming from? Because this is definitely still in leaks and rumors territory. So I would say this is, more in a speculative thing. We'll hopefully find out more at CES, which is getting pretty close. Now, the score leak is coming from All the Watts on X. All the Watts is saying AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT, and then giving us these scores. The GPU score here at 22,894. Now, is there any reason to believe any of this? Because obviously it would be incredibly easy to Photoshop this kind of thing and have this be a complete fake. And I'm going to say that that very well could be the case. This could be utter nonsense. That being said, All the Watts does have some track record of accurate leaks, meaning that it is possible that this is an individual who either themselves is within the supply chain or board partners for graphics cards, or knows people who are and can get information from them. So there is at least some reason to believe that this isn't just random made-up nonsense on Twitter, but if you're not into the speculating on leak stuff, feel free to watch a different video and wait until CES. However, I think it's fun to speculate on all of this stuff because we can first of all look at what the leak says, but then we can also speculate on, so what if we got a card roughly in this performance class? What should it cost to actually be an exciting product? And what else can we expect from it? Also, where are all these Timespy numbers coming from? Well, I was going to look into doing this myself, but Thomas Goronsky on Twitter, I hopefully didn't butcher the name there, has already gone through the effort of not only pulling the scores, but also calculating the percentage differentials for us, so why reinvent the wheel? And I will link all my sources in the video description. Now, he's calling this a versus all GPUs in the price bracket, but we don't know what the price is. And that's part of what I think we'll do in this video, is speculate a little bit on what this would have to cost for me to actually care, if the Timespy scores end up being at all legitimate. But on that note, we're talking Timespy scores. It's important to note that Timespy is a synthetic benchmark. This is not a guarantee of what these GPUs will actually perform like in real-world gaming scenarios. And that's pretty important. For example, if we look at this, the 7900 GRE is kind of the closest match here for the 9070 XT in terms of previous generation, or what's now current generation product, especially looking at AMD. Because we're at 22,443 on the 7900 GRE, and that puts about a 2% differential with the 9070 XT. However, this being a synthetic benchmark, note that the 7900 GRE kind of overperforms here. If we look at the 7900 GRE versus something like the 4070 Super, when we're comparing to NVIDIA, that 4070 Super is only at 20,911. So actually a fairly large performance differential with the 7900 GRE. But if you look at actually average gaming benchmarks, let's say we maybe pull up the Tech PowerUp GPU database, they have only a 2% advantage for the 7900 GRE in actual gaming performance. Now, the game matters a lot here, but in my own head-to-head comparisons, in non-ray traced scenarios, more often than not, the 7900 GRE and the 4070 Super are small single-digit percentage differentials. They're fairly close. However, in ray tracing scenarios, especially in heavier ray tracing scenarios, the 4070 Super pulls more significantly ahead. But all of that being said, again, to say that even if you believe the leaked Timespy score, there's still the issue of synthetic benchmarks do not tell the whole story. Now, the other thing to get into is the fact that there's, even if a 9070 XT matches a 7900 GRE in Timespy, there's also a lot of reason to believe it's going to be more performant in ray tracing. Because of things like what we've seen from a whole bunch of leaks leading up to this, but also stuff that isn't really leaks. We've had, in a video just a few days ago, we've had Mark Cerny from Sony talk about the custom RDNA GPU inside the PlayStation 5 Pro. And that, he says, brings in future RDNA ray tracing improvements. And he discusses those ray tracing improvements. The two major highlights he said that made it into the PS5 Pro GPU was a better way to calculate ray intersections using BVH8 instead of BVH4, which he said could maybe double ray intersection calculations. By having 8 boxes instead of 4 when you're deciding if it hit a certain box. But then also he talked about calculating the stack in hardware versus in software, helping immensely with more divergent ray tracing scenarios, stuff where you're bouncing off of curved surfaces and things like that. So it's very possible that, again, if we buy into this, that maybe we would match a 7900 GRE in, rasterized performance, but could significantly beat it in ray tracing performance, which might then mean that we have something that's more of a 4070 super competitor. But there's a little more to it than that, because then you have the other differentials if you're kind of comparing against NVIDIA, right? Because generally NVIDIA has a feature set advantage, the biggest one that directly affects gaming scenarios. I'm merging situations and scenarios. Guys, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the video, but my kids got me the flu for Christmas, so I'm doing my best here, guys. Anyway, so apologies if I'm fighting through some brain fog during this video. Anyway, the 4070 Super, like I said, if we're trying to claw back market share from NVIDIA, and that is what AMD has talked about. Like if you look at the interviews with Jack Quinn back in September, he's talking about they're not chasing NVIDIA's high end. They want to go where people are actually buying, which is the mainstream segment, and they're going for market share. That's very clearly what they're going for. So if you're going to claw back market share from NVIDIA, what does that need to look like, right? Well, okay, you need to improve your ray tracing performance, so that's no longer a selling point for NVIDIA. But then you also need to improve, like I said, DLSS competitor. Well, we also have this tweet from Huang Fu, who is talking about RX 9070 XT equals FSR 4 equals R9 X3D. So this could mean that the CES announcement from AMD could talk about not just the RX 9070 XT, but could also be revealing FSR 4. Now, whether that's a reveal that isn't actually in games yet, I don't know, right? And then the R9 X3D, Huang Fu has for a long time been talking about January being when we would hear about those R9 X3D chips. Now, speaking of that, that means that Huang Fu has actually talked about, leaks for earlier X3D chips, things like that, has got things accurate. So once again, we're in leaks and rumors territory, but again, coming from a source that has at least some proven track record of probably having some information from either the supply chain, AIB partners, something like that, to potentially have some actual knowledge about these topics. But again, Now, even if you don't trust this post here, FSR 4, well, maybe not by name, but AMD's own Jack Quinn has talked about AMD having been working on an AI-based FSR. So that is absolutely something they're working on. And in the recent video where I talked about Mark Cerny and the PS5 Pro, he talks about Project Amethyst, which is a partnership between Sony and AMD for convolutional neural networks, CNNs, applied directly to gaming scenarios and specifically highlighting things like AI-based upscaling. And the fact that this is designed not just for Sony, it's not just closed, and they want this to be available on other devices, like AMD's market in the PC space. So it is absolutely the case that AMD is working on AI-based upscaling on PC graphics. Now, again, whether or not that means we actually get that available in games in January CES when we hear about the next generation graphics cards is another matter, but tweets like this lend some credence to that being the expectation. Now, do I think FSR 4 will just match DLSS out of the box? I doubt it. We've seen that Sony themselves have kind of struggled with PSSR. There's some games that it looks pretty good in, but there's a lot of games where sometimes even honestly FSR 2 upscaling has a bit of an image quality advantage. Some of that I think has to do with the denoising not being really a part of PSSR. And maybe there could be some improvements to denoisers. Also, it could just need some more time training, right? Because that's the thing is DLSS has gotten so much better with all of the revisions to the model, and they have a massive head start on doing that, right? But let's go with best case scenario, right? If we want to speculate on maybe what should 9070 XT cost for us to be excited about, right? Because I think that's really where all of this comes in is, okay, there's all of this now, but at what cost? Okay, so let's just kind of roll with, it's a 7900 GRE-ish rasterized performance, but with improvements to ray tracing, maybe matching a 4070 Super in ray tracing now, and in rasterized performance. And maybe with an FSR4 upscaler that is almost as good as DLSS. So where does that put us? In other words, what if it's just AMD's version of a 4070 Super, but maybe with 16 gigabytes of VRAM so you don't have the 12 gigabyte VRAM complaint? I mean, that's an interesting product if it's priced correctly. So what do I think about the pricing? Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. Right now, if I tried to buy a 4070 Super, brand new, I would still be paying about $600, and that's a lot of money. So let's think about that. So the 4070 Super is an outgoing generation. We're expecting to at least hear about the 5070 series at CES in January. So I think just trying to match up against it at its current pricing wouldn't be good enough. And even if you did try, like, just throw out the fact that, there's going to be a successor coming out with the 5070, even if we try to enter into the current market right now, I don't think AMD could price very closely to an NVIDIA GPU with basically the same performance, right? So let's say even if AMD offered the same ray tracing performance and the same rasterized performance and had an AI-based upscaler that is maybe almost as good as DLSS, if you had that at the same price as NVIDIA, NVIDIA just has the name brand. They have the mind share. And they have a history of, being more on the forefront of getting new features and getting game adoption. So if you priced it at the same price as a 4070 Super, I don't think you're going to make any inroads on market share. I think, and I don't think you can also just do a 10% less. So if they came in at $550 if the 4070 Super is still out there at $600, I really don't think that gets anybody excited. You also have to come in from the point of, okay, AMD currently has things like, I could buy this right now today. This is a pretty good deal, by the way. The RX 7800 XT has been coming in and out of stock between $420 and $440 on Amazon a lot lately. So here we're looking at $430 on Amazon for a 7800 XT. And if we pull up the score list, the 7800 XT in Timespy hitting about 87.6% of the performance of this rumored 9070 XT, well, then you kind of got to get into, as 7800 XTs are hitting those clearance prices, if the 9070 XT doesn't offer much relevant to that, it doesn't feel that exciting, does it? Now, that being said, the 7800 XT MSRP was more like $500, so you always have that issue of comparing a new generation up against previous generation clearance pricing. So whether that's fair, I don't know. But it is what the actual market is. So if you could have bought a 7800 XT at $430, what is a 9070 XT going to have to offer you? So, I mean, as far as this goes for me, if we essentially got an AMD version of a 4070 Super with AI-based upscaling and decent ray tracing, but with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, I still think it'd have to be under $500 for me to be all that excited for it. Like, I think AMD needs to launch with aggressive pricing, because imagine if the 7800 XT, this was already one of their more aggressively priced products, and at $500, it did put pressure on NVIDIA, and their 4070s did have to drop in price. But imagine if it came in at $450 or $430 at launch, right? That would have been extremely aggressive from AMD. Now, I have no idea how profitable they would be at those kinds of aggressive pricing, but then you have to ask yourself, look at what Intel is doing, right? Intel with their B580, there's a lot of rumors that they're not making any money on those at their list price. But what they are getting is glowing reviews. And glowing reviews is one way to get market share, right? At least if you can get supply. The issue with the B580 right now is, can they restock it, right? But I really think if AMD's truly looking at cutting into NVIDIA market share, we need this FSR 4. We need a lot of performance. We need the increased ray tracing performance. You need to basically be able to say, we're giving you a 4070 Super with more VRAM for like $450. If you do that, I think people are excited. And anything less than that, either in performance or in being more expensive than that, I think you're giving people too much wiggle room to just say, I'll pay a little bit more for the NVIDIA card. And then AMD ends up bringing down the prices a few months after launch, which is what we usually see happening. And then it gets more exciting, but they miss out on those glowing launch reviews, right? Why did the B580 get glowing launch reviews? Price. It came in at a low price. If AMD can come in with a low enough price and the performance and features to match, I think they could get glowing reviews and could be really exciting for people. Also, because if the 50 series is starting out with the 5080 and the 5090, the vast majority of people are going to be excited about a new generation of GPUs but not be able to afford that. If AMD's targeting a price point that people can actually afford in that $400 to $500 price bracket, I know a lot of people are buying, closer to $300, but still $400 to $500 is a lot more realistic than, $1,000 plus, like we'd expect from the 5080, 5090. You can ride that launch wave of new GPU generation. We're excited. But with attractive price to performance. That would be interesting. So what I want to know from you guys is, let's say we're talking 4070 Super ray tracing and rasterized performance, but with 16 gigabytes of VRAM and an improved AI-based upscaler with FSR. If that's what we are getting from the 9070 XT, which to be clear is still speculation, where does that need to be priced for you to be excited about it? I'm really curious what you guys think in the comment section. If that ends up being the case, what does that have to be priced at for you to be like, yeah, I'm definitely buying that over NVIDIA? Let me know, and I hope all of you have an excellent day. I'm gonna go take a nap.